Welcome to Listen by Jean Ginsberg. This audio experience and podcast is all about social media, digital marketing, entrepreneurship, and interviews with top entrepreneurs in the digital and social space. I am your host, Jean Ginsberg, digital marketing expert, #1 best-selling author, and award-winning entrepreneur. I will be sharing with you strategies, tips, and tactics on how to grow your business and your social media following. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, Jean Ginsberg here. Welcome to another excellent episode of Listen by Jean Ginsberg. And of course, today we have a very special guest, Jeroen. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being on the show. This is fantastic. I'm very excited to jump in. So first question I'd like to ask our guests is just to give us some context. Tell us about your background.
Quick background. I'm a biomedical engineer by education. I worked most of my professional life before Salesflare, at least, in pharma marketing. First from the in a pharma company, and afterwards helping pharma companies, mostly helping them to become more digital. When I was a teenager, I was already building websites for other people. I thought that was going to be my career. But I sort of, at that point, it was a bit my career, like building websites, building out full-blown campaigns. I always knew I wanted to start my own company. I had a bunch of projects, most of them failed. And you could say Salesflare is the first time it's actually succeeding.
Great. Well, so much to unpack there, right? I mean, having a career that's completely different from what you're doing, that's interesting to hear. But also, tell us about your previous businesses, because I've had a similar experience. I've had a few businesses before my current one, which didn't work out, failed, just didn't get the revenues that I needed them to be, or that I wanted them to be. So tell us a little bit about some of the businesses you had before Salesflare.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of the common mistakes. I would say that the first one was when I was a teenager, was starting to build websites for other people. It didn't really become a business. It was more like a hobby, and I got paid now and then and all that. Then I went into that's still as a student, selling cell phones. Like I would buy cell phones in Germany and the UK, and I would resell them in Belgium mostly, on different sites. And it was just very, very hard to scale. A lot of handling needed. It's just the margins were okay, but I wouldn't have been able to make a decent living of it. As a student, it was fun. I had some extra money, but then actual businesses. I started a solution for doctors at some point that enabled them to stay on top of the latest research. The issue there was that I couldn't directly charge the doctors, and I was planning to have a whole ads model there, but that's very hard to pull off if you don't have investment money first. It was very difficult to convince other people to work on it with me. So in the end, in the absence of a short-term business model, I failed. After that, I was sort of, at the moment that I was frustrated with the previous business, I started, not really a business. It was more like a blog to help you get ready for the World Cup in Brazil. My wife is Brazilian, so she helped me a bit with that. We basically explained, if you're going to go to the World Cup, you can visit Brazil, and it works like this. You can stay in these places, you can combine these things, and this kind of stuff. That was done because the World Cup in Brazil, as soon as that was finished, the website was finished, basically. Nobody would come to it anymore.
Yeah.
So it was a bit naive at that point. Then I started the business with some other people at a startup weekend. It was around healthcare also. We started a company that helped nurses to easier follow up their patients that had a pacemaker. Like normally you need to go into lots of different portals because they all have different brands, and then try to keep the overview. And we made something that brings it all in one place. That was just really hard after the startup weekend. You're a bunch of guys at a startup weekend, and you win the startup weekend, and that's all fun. And we actually, right after that, we got funding. But then it didn't seem to go anywhere because we were all people with jobs. We didn't really know each other. It's not like there was this really group feeling or something. In the end, I just went out of that business. It is still a business actually nowadays, and it raised a lot of funding by now. But at that moment, it was just going nowhere. And then the next one is Salesflare. Now there's still another business in between, which is where we actually started Salesflare. I joined my co-founder and another guy on a software business, which was BI software. It was an interesting business, just from my perspective, maybe a bit boring, but it was working well. That's maybe another learning. If you do something, make sure it's something you're really passionate about. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's very hard to sustain it.
Yeah. Wow, that's a number of businesses, but interesting to hear that, because I think often entrepreneurs think that, I'm going to start a business and it's going to be successful, and usually that's not the case. It's usually you have a few failed businesses. Yeah. I thought so too in the beginning. Yeah, and then and it turns out you have a few failed businesses. You learn a lot of things during those failed businesses. They're not a waste; they're actually learning experiences. But then and then after maybe a few, then you realize, okay, these are the things I need to be doing, and these are the things that I need to be working on in order to have a more successful business. So yeah, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that, because I think we don't, as an entrepreneurial community, a lot of times we don't talk about the failures that we experience, but it's, a lot of times it's so important to discuss it, because so many people want to start a business, but then think that, it's going to be so easy. And that's not really the case at all. I thought it was going to be easy too when I first started. So tell me about Salesflare. What's the business all about?
We basically fix CRM. To make a long story short, when we were working on that software company, we had a lot of leads we had to follow up, and the sales cycles were pretty long. So from meeting someone to them buying was a lot of follow-up, and we had to organize that somehow. And we found that all the CRMs we tried didn't really help us, not because they were not nice software or something. It's just that we couldn't keep up with them. Like, they always seem to come with this expectation, which was pretty high on us. It was like, you are going to fill out the system perfectly and diligently. Every single thing you do, you're going to put in there. Every person you meet, a new person is copied into an email. You put that person in the CRM. You see an email signature, you're like, I have their phone number, you put in the CRM. And if you do all these things really, really well, then the system is going to help you, because you can see all the things you've been doing. You can see all the data. You can organize yourself. If you don't, then it very quickly goes into this spiral where you don't fill out everything. The system is not entirely useful, so you fill out less, and then at some point you just stop using it, and you fall back to some kind of primitive sheet that doesn't even allow you to track communication in the proper way or so. But just it's the only thing you can keep up with, right? So at some point, we were really frustrated about that. And we saw that actually the data we were filling out in these CRMs was data that was already somewhere else. And then we figured, like, why don't we build a system that pulls the data from all the places where it already is, brings it together for you. You can easily curate it. And then it's super easy to do your follow-up. So Salesflare connects to your emails, where it extracts all kinds of stuff, like the emails, obviously, but email signatures, new people you're in touch with, email tracking, all these kind of things. To your calendar, similar things, your phone, social media, company databases, web tracking is also integrated with the email tracking. And then it just works. Like you're much less dependent on your own data input. That's what the system does, and you can use the software to organize yourself.
Wow, so that a kind of a newer type of CRM. So how is it different from like a Salesforce or just your typical run-of-the-mill CRM? This podcast is brought to you by the Digital Marketing Method monthly group coaching program, your methodology for growing your business and your social media following. Join me and my group of supportive entrepreneurs and learn how you can grow your business and your social media following, where we cover topics such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, email marketing, and so much more. Go to dmgroup.online, dmgroup.online.
Like a Salesforce is even another thing, in the sense that Salesforce is like this enterprise CRM, which is essentially built for organizations, not really for end users, you could say. If an organization wants to build out their own software, almost like it's completely customized to them, then Salesforce is a great solution. For small and medium-sized businesses, there's better things than Salesforce. Salesforce is not a great fit at that moment. Then you probably find HubSpot or something. Now we make it much easier compared to, for instance, HubSpot, to do your follow-up. HubSpot is in essence a manual system in which they do pull in some things automatically, but it's not built from the ground up to be something automated. So it works differently. It does the same things, but in a different way. And if you try the two systems next to each other, you'll see that in Salesforce it's super easy to keep it all up to date. In HubSpot it's more of a drag.
Yes, and it's good to hear this, because I use a CRM as well, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners who are listening here use some sort of CRM or some sort of system to keep all your contacts in one place. And the follow-up is definitely a challenge. I mean, I do that every week. I have a list of people that I need to follow up with, and it's organizing it, and getting it all set up is definitely a challenge. So this is potentially a good way to solve for that problem, right? I mean, these are good problems to solve, right? Because as a business, so follow-up is a big part of creating sales, right? For your own company. So
we have customers, for instance, that I know of one customer that they're just 3 salespeople, and they make $1 million more per year just with better follow-up now, they told me. So it can make a really big difference, because there's so many things that you just don't even see that you're not following up. It just slips and it's gone. It's as if your mailbox keeps filling up, and you don't go back. Then you point out, or you send an email and then just completely forget that this person exists.
Yes, and then I actually have done that, where I would go back to my old contacts, and I was like, I never followed up with that person. Like, this would be 3 years later. Obviously, not everybody I would follow up with now, but it's just that happens all the time, where you have a lead, you respond, but then maybe they don't respond back, and then you never tag them, or you never put them in your CRM, and you just kind of forgot about them. And then 3 years later, you're like, oh, there was that lead. I didn't follow, didn't like continuously follow up with them. So I can certainly say that one of the ways I was able to grow my business, just even organically, has been to just follow up, like have a consistent strategy for following up with leads. And that increased just a big part of my business, just by doing something very small, not even going out and finding new leads, just following up with current or old leads that potentially could be a good business client, or good business fit. So what kind of businesses do you work with typically? Are they typically small businesses?
They're typically small or medium-sized. Like I said, the really big ones, like something like Salesforce, is a better fit. But not for the smaller, medium-sized ones. They really look for something that actually helps them with the basic things like following up. They don't need to have something that organizes their organization internally. It's more about the relationships they're managing. It's mostly agencies on our software.
Uh-huh.
So think digital marketing agencies like yourself. We have a ton of them on the software. Software development companies, consulting, and all kinds of types of consulting, from companies who guide other companies how to be more sustainable, to management consulting. And then on the other end, we also have a lot of tech companies on the software. This is from SaaS companies like ourselves, software as a service, to telecom companies, for instance.
Right.
All of that.
Okay. Wow. So lots of different verticals. So switching gears here a little bit. So of course we had a very big pandemic in the world over the last year and a half. How has that changed your business? Or maybe it hasn't changed your business. Do you want to share, what's been going on for you guys? Has COVID been helpful, not helpful? Maybe it hasn't changed at all.
It didn't change that much in the way we are in touch with customers. Like we are in Belgium, but most of our market is in the US. Most of our customers are there. In the UK, we also have quite some, and in 70 other countries, I think. So they're a bit all over the world. I don't drive to customers. We have, if we have meetings, it's Zoom meetings. We have chat, phone, email support, all those kind of things. You don't need to be there with them. So for us, we've always been remote in that way. During COVID, though, we were also remote internally. Then that was a change because we were used to all being in the same room. And we sort of relied on that a little for our communication. We had to, especially in the first months of the pandemic, we had to systematize a lot of our communication so that it flowed, much more systematically through software, obviously, through Google Docs and Slack and a combination of that. But it was mostly about the processes there to make sure that everybody staying on the same page. They had to change a bunch of things. Maybe one basic thing I can share is at the end of each meeting, we try to limit the amount of people in the meeting, because we see that if most meetings, if they go over 3 people, then the rest of the people are just sitting there disengaged, because it's hard to have a discussion with more than 3, especially over Zoom or so. So we keep our meetings very small, but then everybody else, it's good if they're also up to date on what was discussed. So we always have this meeting document where we have every single thing we discussed and decided in there, sort of bullet point format. But at the end of each meeting, we don't expect that people are going to read the whole document. That's never going to happen. So we take 10 minutes or so to think through what is it that everyone else who was not in this meeting should know about what we discussed here.
Like the highlights.
We call it announcements. Highlights is a good name. And that then links up to the full document if they want to read further. But we put that in Slack, everybody reads it, and you're up to date.
So just like the bullet points of the main things that were discussed. So that's a good point. So you don't necessarily have to have everybody in the meeting, but you might want to share like the main things that were discussed. So that's a good point for small businesses, right? Especially now that a lot of small businesses are working remotely. Maybe they weren't before, and so how do you manage meetings, right? That's a good way of describing it. So this has been a great conversation. I always like to ask a last question, which is kind of a wild card. What is your prediction for the industry? And it's a very open-ended question. It could be specifically your industry, like maybe SaaS, or it could be self-driving cars, robotics, going to Mars, whatever's top of mind for you. Feel free to speak freely.
There's a lot of topics. I'll keep it to CRMs, perhaps.
Sure.
I think CRMs are going to become more and more sales tools, where people maybe think of them still as databases, because many of them are still systems in which you just essentially put some info and then it might help you or so. It really becomes a sales system. You organize yourself through it, you can communicate through it, you automate relationships through it, you report on these. And I see that a lot of sales tools that we have separately from a CRM now are going to become part of it. They'll all sort of get absorbed there. And then the next level is going to be there, that on top of all that data, and because everything is there and it's connected, and because there's so much more data, if you automate a lot of it, then the next step is AI, where everything starts becoming more intelligent. And in the end, if you want a wild sort of prediction as a salesperson, you'll only be talking to the customer, and the CRM will take care of all the rest. It will say this is what the meeting was about. It's going to follow up for you, and the whole thing will happen for you. It's just you need to apply your empathy as a salesperson, and the software will do the rest.
I wish that's where that's going to be all going, because I want the software to follow up for me. That's pretty exciting prediction. I'm looking forward to that one. I love automation. So great. Well, this is fantastic. Last question is, how can our audiences get in touch with you?
If you want to know more about Salesflare, salesflare.com, that's Flare. You can read about the software. You can actually see it if you click try it free. You can see the walkthrough, and then you can decide to make an account or not. We also have a lot of tips on the blog about sales and sometimes marketing and startup funding, and definitely have a look there. If you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best place. Just type my name. You can't miss. There's only one person with my exact name. But if you connect with me, please do include a personal message. I do get a lot of spammy connection requests every day. So if that doesn't have a personal message, I don't know what it's about, and I'll just assume spam. But if you do include one, I'll certainly get in touch with you, and we can have a chat.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jeroen from Salesforce. Great conversation. I love talking about SaaS and technology, and I'm sure this is very helpful for our audience. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This is fun.